If you run an agency or an agency sales team, there are 3 objections that are killing your sales process. And in this video, I'm going to go over what those 3 objections are that you're likely getting on a daily basis currently and how to get over them. So the first objection that I want to take a look at is I already have an agency, that they have an agency currently. Because to be honest, most businesses, when they're looking for another agency, maybe when they're filling out their ad, they most likely have an agency currently, and maybe they're not just satisfied, or maybe they are just wanting to explore other options and see what could be better for them. And so the first thing is they say, well, I have an agency. And so therefore they think that because they have an agency, that they need to cancel with that business. Hold on one second. And so what is the actual objections? As I have an agency already, right? Which means that they think is that because they have a current agency that they actually have to end their current contract to move forward with you, or maybe they're just going to go back to that agency. And so when you get that objection at the very end, it's like, oh, well, if you just let them go and go have the conversation with the agency, they're probably not going to have that conversation. That's not the real reason to why they wouldn't want to move forward. Or, B is they're too comfortable, or they don't feel like that your service delivery is going to be light years better than the previous agency, right? So how do we get over this objection? Well, the first thing is you don't want to overcome this objection and have to do it in the objection handling. If you get this objection at the very end, you're totally screwed. Right, so likely in your beginning, you want to isolate this objection in your discovery. You have to understand, do you have any, what have you tried so far? Like maybe you guys have an agency currently, all right, what do they do? Right, so in your discovery, you need to isolate this objection and understand what the details are, right? What does the agency currently do? And also, how is it going so far, right? So with the existing agency they have, like what are they responsible for? How is that going, right? And then what we want to do is we want to ask them, if you have an agency currently, obviously we're an agency as well, right? Why not just double down with what you have already, right? What we want to do is we want them to cannibalize the other agency. We want them to realize that their current process isn't going to get them to where they want to be, and that in order to move forward, they need to get rid of the previous process and add our process, right? But in order to do that, I don't want to antagonize the other agency by saying, oh, they're probably not doing something that's very good, blah, blah, blah. I want them to realize that for themselves, right? So awesome. Why not just double down with the existing agency? Have you just tried spending more ad spend with them, right? Or have you had a conversation with them about what's going on, right? What did they say, right? Because if let's say they're already spending ads or doing outreach, blah, 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 why not just do more outreach with them? Just spend more. Right, and get a higher volume. But most likely, a lot of agencies, they've already tried that. And what I want them to say is well, we already tried that, but either they weren't getting the performance that we needed, or maybe we doubled ad spend, but didn't get double the return, diminishing returns, or the communication was bad. I want them to say to themselves that they cannot get to where they want to be with their existing agency, right? And so I want them to understand and doubling down. The next thing is I want them to understand the opportunity cost of staying in the same spot, right? Because a lot of agency owners, well, let me just have a conversation with the agency and let's hope that things actually get better, right? Well, hope is not a factor that you want in a business, but I want them to understand and admit to themselves that, they might say, hey, well, let me just go talk to my agency, see if they can do what you just told me. They just got some free info from you, and they're gonna say goodbye. But what I want them to say is, what happens? This agency, how long has it been with them that you had this really bad performance, or you're getting some good leads, but the performance isn't where you want to be? How long has it been like that? Okay, three months. And what's gonna happen if we continue? What do you feel like is gonna happen? Do you feel like they're gonna improve because you have talked to them about this before? Do you feel like bringing up this as a conversation again, they'll actually change? Because what happens if this stays on for another 6 months from now? Right, what's gonna happen to the business, right? We calculate all the money that they're leaving on the table with them. Obviously, John, you're on this call because, do you believe that there's a better process out there for you? right? Because you're not gonna go to the club looking for another chick with a wife at home, right? Is you're on this call because you believe there's a better opportunity out there and you're not as satisfied as the current one. But can you see how you're also leaving money on the table like this? Because how do you feel about leaving X amount of money on the table? Because what could we do with that money for the business? Because right now, John, what I also want to paste and use a metaphor to drive it home is what I call the region paradox. Region beta paradox. Which means, hey John, I mean, have you heard of the region beta paradox? Well, imagine, you're with a girl and, she isn't like totally cheating on you, but she's like talking to other guys every chance she gets. But, she's still, your girlfriend and everything, and you're in a relationship with her, but you're not getting out of the relationship. But could you do better? Yeah. It's probably better that she would do worse, that she would actually cheat on you so that you'd actually leave the relationship and put yourself in a better position. What I want to talk about here, John, is the complacency that you're in with where you are. Because, John, do you believe that there's a better process out there, similar to if you feel like there's a better girl or better job for you out there, kind of like in that situation? Or there is, right? But because things right now are so comfortable, it would be better for you if they were worse, because it would actually force you to leave the situation that you're in and not leave all that money on the table. So my question for you, John, is what are we going to do here? Are we going to continue leaving money on the table? Do we believe there's a better opportunity out there, right? So then, John, we now have two options. Either we cancel, you bring on us, and you cancel that agency, or you keep the agency and you bring us on anyways. Which two outcomes are we going to do, right? But notice both the two outcomes that I told him it's going to bring me on anyways. But it's whether he's going to bring us on, cancel, or bring us on and continue running with the agency, right? Anyways, notice anything that I said, I did not antagonize the other agency. I helped him realize for himself, to bring awareness to what is going on currently and what problems are. Help him understand there's no point in doubling down with what he's currently doing because it's obviously not worked. And that I want to paint the opportunity cost and I want to drive the point home with a metaphor and then ask him again, give him two outcomes, get him to say that he's going to work with me regardless because he understands what I'm saying. Right? So that's one objection that honestly kills. The next one I want to go over is I am shopping around. And we get this all the time in any offer, right? Is I am shopping around. What this means is that they're saying, I need to, look at different options. Maybe they haven't really called through the rest of the day. I need to look at everything and make a decision. They believe that by having more information, they're going to get, be put in themselves in a more informed decision. But information does not equate to action, right? Action is the only thing that drives success, right? They actually don't do anything. They just collect information. Yes, they're better informed, but they actually haven't changed anything in their current situation, right? So the first thing that we want to understand when they're saying, shopping around is like, obviously I acknowledge, like, I understand where you come from. And I guess for you, like, how long have you been shopping around for, right? How long has you had this problem for? So I want them to understand how long they've been looking for a solution. Because what I'm doing here is I want to paint, the first thing that I want to do is I want to understand their current situation and paint the opportunity cost. So John, you've been looking at things for 3 months. Now, in the past 3 months, you've been getting on calls with people like me. I mean, would you say like you're at least better informed, right, John? Like, yeah. But I mean, has your process changed? Has anything improved? Since you've been on calls with a lot of us, has anything improved in your business? Because, I mean, if things would improve, like, you wouldn't still be on a call with me, right? So is it fair to say, like, while the 3 months we've been shopping around, yes, we're better informed, but we haven't really accomplished anything, right? Because I know, John, you said you're wanting to have another 1 or 2 calls, you have another one scheduled today, and you're gonna make a decision today. But like, I mean, what happens if this turns on for another, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, right? And how that doesn't happen. But John, can you see how the same mindset of, oh, I just have one more call, 2 more calls. That same mindset of procrastinating and not putting this as a priority has put you in this position here to where it doesn't matter if it was just 1 more minute, 1 more hour. That same mindset of 1 more is what's keeping you from making no progress the past 3 months. Question for you, John, is like, how do you feel about that? What's going to happen to the business if we continue letting this happen and procrastinate? What do you need to feel like we need to do differently? Right? Because I want to drive I want to show a perspective, John, is like, if I today was a fat kid eating an ice cream, so I'm gonna go through a metaphor. I'm a fat kid today eating an ice cream, and I'm just saying, have me look at one more gym. During the time I still continue eating that ice cream cone, have I gotten any skinnier by looking at all the different diet plans, different personal trainers, and different gyms? No, right? But it's the same idea that I'm gonna look at one more gym that keeps me fat, right? Same as the smoker that says, it's just 1 more cigarette, man. It's not gonna hurt, but it's that 1 more cigarette that puts him in the hospital, right? With his lungs collapsed. But it's the same mindset that I just have 1 more that keeps them in the same place and puts them in that position that never grows, right? My question for you is, are you gonna be the smoker that says, I just need 1 more? Or are you ready to take action, right? So I'll use the metaphor to drive home. There's 2 more that we can use. Is process versus action. And then we have giving a taste of their own medicine that we can use. I'm giving you lots of ammo for you guys to use. So process versus action is, John, you've been looking at different processes and different businesses to work with, lead generation, to make this work. But, at some point, John, you're gonna have to decide on one of them, right? Regardless of price, even if it's free. Would you agree that, for you, is the process, or is it gonna be the action that you put into the process that's gonna allow you to get the results that you want to achieve and grow the business? What's the action, right? Why? Right, because obviously, even if you get leads, you don't take any action, you're not gonna get there, right? Because in the time that you've been looking at different processes, you're wanting to make decisions based on what you see, right? But do we grow the business by making decisions on what we see, or making decisions on taking action from yourself, putting into the business? Right, so you don't have to work with me here, John, but what is it gonna come from? Looking at different things, finding the right thing, or taking action on what's right and what's good for the business? What's actually gonna help us today? All right, next thing I'll give a taste of medicine is, let's say, John, you're on a call, with one of your customers, and they say, John, I just want to talk to a couple more guys like you, and then let you know, even though all the other guys are probably similar to you, what would you say to them? Because are they really accomplishing much by getting a couple more quotes? Has a customer ever gone? Customer's gone with you for the first quote before, right? Did you screw them over? No. Why? Because if a customer goes with you and they trust you, they ensure that trust onto you, they're not screwing themselves over by not looking at other things, right? But why is that? But more so is the fact that, a customer looking at different things and different prices doesn't really do anything because they're just prolonging their pain, right? And so my question for you, John, is, you want, what are the type of customers that you want? Customers that take action and go with you, or customers that continue to shop around? Which one's gonna allow you to grow their business? Or customers that go with you, right? But it's because they place that trust on you, right? You want customers to actually trust you. And so is it fair to want that trust from customers? That, if I were to work together with you and this goes well, it's you want those type of customers. You want me to bring those customers to the table, right? You want customers that trust you. And we want customers to give that trust on us. How is it fair for us to want that trust for the customers if we're not able to put our own trust on our own things? For example, lead generation and getting you customers today. Because how can we expect our customers to not shop around when we're doing the same exact thing? Right? So, hope with all these metaphors is that you always want to paint the opportunity cost, help them understand, use different metaphors, different methods here, and you most indefinitely will get over the shopping around objection. And more importantly, after I go through the metaphor, I'll be like, can you see how it relates to our current situation? What are we going to do now? What kind of decisions do we need to make? What does that look like in our conversation today, right? So likely, you already have an objection of, I have an agency already, I am shopping around. And so these are pretty big ones, right? I have an agency currently, I am shopping around, and probably the third biggest one. These are the two biggest ones that I get in our agency. When you get to the objection handling, all this can be solved with good pre-handle and discovery. But I would say the next biggest objection that we see is, so I wouldn't go over, I don't think it's any logistical objections. If they say have any logistical problems, that's not real, right? But let's take a look at, let's say, a logistical objection, right? So this is kind of a blanket objection. Usually they're just saying, they just make up something with logistics, right? So they said that, oh, I need to get my business license or something like that in order to do it, right? Or something like that, or I need this to happen, I need to hire this person to do that, right? That they have some logistical objection that they need to get over. And a lot of times people think that this is legitimate, but it's not. And so what they are saying is the perfect moment, right? They're waiting for the perfect moment, right? And the second thing is what we want to do is we want to paint the opportunity cost, right? It's like logistics, timing, it's all the same objection, right? So what we want to do is paint the opportunity cost. I'll say, John, I mean, obviously, if everything in the world would be perfect, the world was round, we would do it, right? And I'm sure you want to feel like this is the perfect opportunity for you and perfect moment. But how long has it been that you've been actually wanting to do something like this? Okay, like 3 months. And what do we accomplish during those 3 months? Really nothing, right? So my question for you is like, how long are we going to wait for the perfect opportunity to do something? Because what I'm going to do is I'll calculate all the money they're leaving on the table, because things are going to happen all the time. Even when you do this, you're going to have problems. Sometimes with your truck, your sales team, different things, you're going to have different problems that are going to come up. That's the nature of running a business. But are you going to let those things prevent you from actually moving forward and scaling a business? Because in the 3 months prior, when you were looking at this, when you didn't have these problems, right? That didn't prevent you from doing things, right? Because if I had a customer that you didn't have to pay for right then and then in front of you, whether you're busy or have all these logistics, would you say no to that customer? Or you would still do the job, right? So is it really that looking at your license or getting the LLC is actually preventing you from doing it because you've been doing that for the past 3 months without it, right? So is it the perfect opportunity, or we have to make this the perfect opportunity, right? So what I want them to understand is opportunity costs, the consequences of wanting to make this a perfect opportunity for them, and then you drive home with a metaphor, right? The metaphor that I used to use, that you could use for this is, there's one from the Bible. My pen is out, so excuse me for my bad writing, is we can use a metaphor from the Bible that goes like, so imagine John was stranded on an island, and during the island he started praying, and then God sent him 3 boats. The first boat came, and the fisherman said, "Hey, we would get off the island, come with me." And then the man said, "I'm waiting for God," right? And the next boat comes over. He says, "Okay, I'm the last boat that even come here. There's a big storm coming. I'm gonna wait for, and we have to go." And he says, "I'm gonna wait for God." And then the next day, the storm comes and kills the person, right? But the entire time, he's waiting for the right opportunity. That he goes to heaven. God says, "Well, I sent you 2 boats, and you never went on there," right? So I guess for you is, are we going to continue waiting and looking at different boats, or are we going to choose one to get on, right? To help them understand that a logistical issue is them just prolonging the decision and waiting on the perfect opportunity, right? Which there's actually no perfect opportunity. So all these objections really are smoke screens at the end of the day. The ones that I think are a little bit more complicated is like, I have an agency already, and then I am shopping around. I have an agency already. You have to narrow that down in the discovery, and then I'm shopping around is something that I hope you narrow down in the discovery as well, but you can also handle in the objection handling. So I hope these 3 objections and how to handle it that we handle in our agency helps you understand how to get to those objections in your sales process. If you need any help, feel free to book a call with us below and see if we're a good fit to work together.